Ladies and gentlemen, you've already heard it. Airtel and Jio have struck deals with Elon Musk to bring Starlink to India. But what does this translate to for you and for me once the regulatory approvals are in place? Let's break this down with whatever we know, followed by industry experts. Let's make this relevant to our viewers. First up, let's look at affordability. Well, based on comparisons across countries and a report in Economic Times, Starlink's hardware, or what's called setup or installation costs in layperson's term, could cost anywhere between 25,000 to 35,000 rupees, with a monthly subscription fee to access the service estimated at around 5,000 to 7,000 rupees. I mean, this is based on the comparisons that have emerged. Far higher than India's average broadband cost of 700 to 1,500 rupees monthly. But this could of course change with telecom companies joining hands with Starlink to further their own penetrations as well. Well, but just to compare, United States setup cost is around $599 monthly at around $110 to $120. If you look at, say, Germany, France, UK, it's around the same costs, roughly around the same cost. Japan, Australia setup cost is around $700 to $800 with a monthly cost of around $120 to $130. Now, what is this entire hullabaloo about? What is Starlink? Let's just break this down as simply as we can. It's a satellite-based wireless internet and not broadband. We'll get to the difference between satellite as well as broadband services in a bit. But sticking to what Starlink is, it uses satellites orbiting Earth to transmit data and has around 7,000 satellites in its orbit, gives high-speed internet, currently present in over 100 countries, and can work well in remote areas, even on boats and ships, can work well in even extreme weather conditions. How is it different from what we have in India currently? Well, satellite-based internet uses, let's just break this out. So, satellite wireless internet relies on tar. That's a broadband wireless internet. It really is based out of or relies on tars for that matter. But of course, services like Starlink would be satellite-based. And the satellite-based internet, the speed can be up to 250 Mbps, whereas the regular wireless internet is, the 4G speed that we get is around 20 to 100 Mbps. Compare that, 20 to 100 Mbps at the 4G speed that we really get. But when we're looking at satellite-based internet services, we're looking at a speed of up to 250 Mbps. That's almost more than double of the speed that we have access to. Satellite-based internet is great for remote areas. The reach is far more better when you compare it to the broadband services, which is largely stable in urban areas. Now, SpaceX Starlink entry to India is set to give big boost to internet penetration. The big digital India dream that we all keep talking about. Remember, the internet penetration in India is currently at around 47%, with 700 million people without reliable internet access. That's a big number. 945 million people are broadband subscribers, while 95% users are wireless users. I mean, look at this entirety, all the numbers together, and that also gives you a sense of why India is such a big market for Elon Musk, for that matter. And if you break it down further, you would also get the sense of urgency of why these entries and these deals are really being made. But let me just get our experts on board at this point. And remember, Starlink is in over 100 countries even as we speak. So I'm being joined by Dhruv Motwani, who's in head for AI Avahi, Almaz Johari, who is a market and tech expert, as well as Dr. Satya N Gupta, who's a former principal advisor for TRAI. Thank you very much, all three of you. Thank you very much for joining us. First up, let me give you a heads up. There's a very complicated task before you all, and that is to break down and simplify jargons to make it as relevant to our viewers. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Satya, let me just come to you first. With all your experience, Dr. Satya, let's just start with questions that people have. Of course, there may not be any direct answer to this. But the first question that everybody asks, does this mean we're going to get far more faster internet access? Two, are we going to be spending as much as US does? How do you look at these questions?
Yeah, thank you, Neha. Actually, the answer to both the question is no. First is about the faster speed claim by satellite broadband. You yourself have mentioned that it can give about 200 Mbps, 250 Mbps, and you compared it with 4G. Actually, we should compare it with 5G speeds. 5G speeds are already more than 200 Mbps, 250 Mbps. So the satellite broadband can never be faster than the terrestrial broadband when we are in 5G era and going to 6G era. The second thing about the cost, the affordability and the cost of US and the initial cost projection of the Starlink for India also like $99 per month kind of thing, and initial cost of about $500. So those also in India, nobody wants that kind of tariff, that kind of expenditure. Neither we can afford it, nor we need it actually. Where we need these kind of premium or niche services, that we need, as you have also mentioned, only in rural and remote area where the terrestrial communication, the data communication have not reached. Like 2G, 3G would have reached, but 4G, 5G have not reached. The fiber have not reached. And those locations are merely for 40,000 out of 650,000 villages. Only 40,000 locations pass the test of remote in that sense, or technically non-feasible from the terrestrial infrastructure like fiber and 5G. So that is the only market side. And unfortunately, there the affordability level is much lower than what you are mentioning, 700 to 1500 rupees per month, which urban people can still afford for broadband, even if speed is 100 Mbps. But in that we can get 250 Mbps also in urban. So it is a big no as far as this kind of tariff cannot be actually sold. Nobody, especially in India, which is a very price sensitive market, affordability is an issue, and competition is there. In urban, whatever you are telling or whatever satellite broadband is claiming, that is already there. It is a settled market as far as urban is concerned. Like you mentioned, 950 million broadband users are there. Actually, out of them, maximum are in urban. Rural broadband density is only 35%, actually, not 47%, only 35%. And urban is about 85%. So in urban, this does not solve a problem. It is not, it is for niche, what I mentioned, 40,000 villages and surrounding area where affordability is not there at all, even with the conventional tariff of 700 to 1500. In rural, people cannot afford that. So that is a big no-no. But yes, they are trying to reduce the cost. How they are trying to reduce, and that is where the partnership with Airtel and Jio comes in play. Actually, they are being partner, franchisee. You can call them value-added reseller. You can call them the distributor. So that is the answer to your first two questions.
Okay, so here's my, before I go to the other panelists, very quickly, because you said compare Starlink or the satellite internet speed to 5G. Now, here's a question. If you're going to compare that, how many services actually, service providers actually provide good quality, uninterrupted 5G? I'm asking this question from a very customer relevant position because I, few months back, changed my service provider because my calls kept dropping. I don't want to name the service provider, but 5G was a distant dream. 4G wasn't really working out. Do you want to respond to that, Dr. Satya, before I go very quickly to the other two?
Yes, Yeah. 5G actually is there, already there, as you know. 2 lakhs towers are already having 5G. You of course, one operator, if is not having service, a good service in your area, you go to other. Actually, two, according to my knowledge, Airtel and Jio are already matured as far as 5G is concerned. And you are right, BSNL and Voda have yet to start 5G. That is correct. But our Jio and Airtel already are giving 5G, the kind of service. You would have seen this Kumbh experiment where today paper has been publishing the download speed in Kumbh, where so much crowd is there. Everyone was happy with 5G services of whatever operator was offering there. They are talking, they go 250 Mbps easily. So 5G is there. Actually, what happens is in some areas, yes, there are dark spots. They were there in 4G also. They are there in 3G also. Like these VIP areas, our Luton Delhi, where towers are not permitted to be installed. So you cannot blame the operator that your service is bad or call drops are there. That is because the areas are prohibited from them.
Okay, that's going to be a little difficult to accept, but we'll get to that in a bit and you could explain that further. We're talking about urban spaces, we're talking about being in the heart of the city and still not getting access to 5G from service providers. But okay, we'll get to that, sir. We'll get to that. We have quite a bit of time. But Almaz Johari, let me come in. So if we go by what Dr. Satya is saying, what is this? Is this all hype then? Why are, say, Airtel or Jio already going and having deals with SpaceX for the Starlink services if they've not even got approvals for India? Just going by what Dr. Satya has said, his explanation, then how do you explain what's happened over the last 48 hours?
Like you already mentioned, I mean, we still have a large number of population which do not have access to high-speed internet. As a business person, I mean, personally to me, I think it's an exciting news and an exciting turning point for an Indian business landscape, right? So the biggest hurdle that we've had so far is, like I said, the access to high-speed internet. So these hurdles.
Okay, break it down for me, Almaz Johari. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you because as I said, I'm going to break it down and simplify it for customers. So Almaz, allow me to interrupt you. I'll stay with you. You said the biggest challenge has been high-speed internet. Dr. Satya just said that India has high-speed internet.
Yes.
How explain this to us?
No, but I mean these. So the terrestrial networks which cannot be accessed in the remotest of areas, right? There is no internet there. I mean, there is no high-speed internet there for a daily consumption. I mean, we are living in a digital world today, and for us, to be without internet is almost impossible. So to reach these areas, it is very important to have access to high-speed internet, which is only possible through satellite based networks.
Okay, so if that's your explanation, then is this what it is? Is this about getting to the areas which do not have internet penetration, say to the remote parts, to bridge the urban-rural divide? Is that what this really is? Are you then saying there's not much an offering for India's urban or India's metro cities?
So it is not going to be of very use in a densely populated area, as Mr. Satya has already mentioned, right? This is essentially more for the inaccessible areas, like remote areas, especially in the northeastern Himalayan areas or a desert, where inaccessible villages. Which is far away from nearest town, right? So the internet there will empower the local communities, the local businesses, be it agriculture, be it in hospitals or healthcare or schools. So they will have access to high-speed internet, and they can, it empowers them to be competing with the with other national players. Yeah.
Sure, Dr. Satya. I mean, Dhruv Motwani, just give me a few minutes. Give me 2 minutes. I'll just come to you. Let me just go back to Dr. Satya. Dr.
Yes.
Satya, with your expertise, let me ask this question to you again. So, if what Almaz Johari is saying, that this is about rural penetration, it's about
Yes.
ensuring that internet reaches as far as it can to the remotest part of India, you're actually, is it fair to say that there's not much in this Starlink Connect for India for the urban and the metro cities? I mean, how do you look at that if a question like that is put to you?
Yeah. That is very good question, madam, and I like to agree with you on that. Though main problem which the Starlink or satellite communication solve will be the rural and remote area which are unconnected from data. That is correct. But yes, in urban also you will be surprised to know there are lot of unconnected places. In urban also, lot of dark spaces are there. Like I told about Lutyens Delhi. Some area of Lutyens Delhi does not have 5G, 4G. So that is where the Starlink kind of thing or satellite kind of thing will work. In addition to them, there are some urban requirement of the enterprises, of the critical communication requirement of the businesses, of the hospitals, which is called critical, which needs no call drop actually. They need 100% reliable, available service. That is where satellite comes in place. That is called enterprise customer, enterprise business. That is another niche area which the terrestrial network alone cannot do. So satellite will have to play a backup role actually. Suppose your terrestrial is down and what the critical communication need is that it should not be down. So that time satellite channel will take over. So that is a very important use case of satellite communication, and that way in some places you want 100% connectivity. You cannot afford any failure or any call drop kind of scenario. That is where satellite will sell. Satellite will solve a problem because people will buy this service even at a higher cost if it is solving a problem which conventional technology is not solving. So conventional technology is unable to give you 100% uptime, whereas a combination of terrestrial and satellite both can give you 100%. And that is where it will be actually liked and used. And lot of areas like Delhi alone have 300 dark spots. Delhi alone, we are talking of urban now. In Delhi,
Okay.
there are some spots and they are counted as 300. They are as treated as bad as villages. So that is where satellite can play a role.
Oh, that sounds terrible. Maybe I'm living in one of those hot spots which you have just mentioned. That's why I had those issues. But thank you very much for putting that in
Yes.
perspective for us. Dhruv
Yes.
Motwani, if I can get you in.
Yes.
Mr. Dhruv Motwani, you are in the United States. Is there more to look to Starlink than being a disruptor? How would you look at what's happening
Hi,
within
Sneha.
India?
First of all, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I think, I in fact used Starlink yesterday. So I took a flight from like, let's call it like, San Francisco to Seattle on United Airlines. And on United, if you fly, they have like unlimited Starlink access, like on the airplane, there is no other way for us to, get the internet, like, without Starlink, at least at this point. Basically, that's one of the use case. And a lot of other places where I've seen, Starlink being used is like, think about like, you also all have electricity at home, but you still have generators, right? Like you never know when the power supply will go down. So those are the places where people use Starlink a lot more.
Yeah.
So let's say, even if you're taking a train from, let's say like Rajdhani from Mumbai to Delhi, and if you want high speed internet, like you'll get much more reliability from Starlink than, even relying on like Reliance, Jio, or even Airtel and those kind of things. As well as, I think Kumbh was a good example. I think in those cases, the government increases the capacity, but there are like a lot of events which happen in a given city where your internet or your call drops, and then, like Starlink can help on that. And obviously on the rural areas, I think as other panelists mentioned, like if you go in the Himalayas or if you go in like, some places in Northeast, like you just don't have that much, capacity available. And that's where the Starlink can help you a lot. So like, yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting to put things in perspective. So you're essentially saying it's not just enabling what already exists. It may just about open more windows and corridors, or for
Yep,
service
exactly.
providers, in fact.
Yep,
That may
exactly.
impact daily lives.
Yeah, I think it just provides you a bit more reliability, right? Like, so even that's the reason, like Airtel and Jio are partnering with them. Like, they're not looking at it as a competition. They're like, hey, we know like there are some places where we can't reach, and where Starlink has some added advantage to provide that. And obviously, this tech is changing every day. Like we're talking about 2G couple of years ago, and then 3G, 4G, 5G. Like, and maybe year or two, Starlink will have better tech. Obviously, like these Airtel and Jio will have like 6G coming up and all those things. So.
So, Almas, could you put this in perspective for us? Because you're already in the United States. India is going to be seeing the satellite service of Starlink enter possibly very soon. We don't know how soon. We are still trying to understand the administrative approvals, the timeline for this. But just to put this in perspective, how does it work in US? Because we were seeing the costs, it's way too high when you compare it to what India is used to. But in terms of competitors, in terms of service providers, what you're seeing between Starlink, Jio, and Airtel at this point, is that a common spectrum? Is that a common scene in United States as well? Or is it very, very different? Because, I mean, we're just trying to understand, bring to our viewers the two sides.
Yeah, I think the main difference between US and India is that, like, even right now, like if I take any of the, let's say, like, SIM card or 5G providers, they would still cost me like $40 to get, 10 gigs of data, which is like 1/10 or, like even 5% of what it costs on India, basically. So I think that will be a bit of a difficulty for Starlink. Like, why would a consumer pay like, 10x price compared to what they can get in India, basically?
That's
But
true.
I think for now, it's mostly going to be the rural users, as well as, let's call it like the premium users, right? Like the enterprise or like healthcare scenario where you need, uninterrupted supply, basically. I think that's where we'll see the highest adoption.
Yeah.
But or like, any other technology, like, when cell phones came or like TV came, like they were very expensive, but over a period of time, the cost reduces sharply, basically. So it's just a starting point for very niche use cases, but eventually it will become, like wide adopted, just like, how we saw cell phones revolution in India, basically a couple of years ago.
Right. Dr. Satya, if I can get you in for a very important part. And, you have Elon Musk, his company, Elon Musk himself, actually very closely associated with the US government. So having something like, say, a Starlink in India is no longer just a private business. It also has very close allies with the government. It's part of the government. At least the top boss, as we say, is part of the government in the United States. Would that be a concern for India? How would the bridges or the lines be drawn?
No, that cannot be a concern because both are separate things. Yes, he is very close to the government, but he is not the government. In that case,
he's
in
not
our
close to the government, so he's part of the
are
government.
supposed to be very close to the government, but they are not the government. Yeah. And within the government, he is part of the government as a Elon Musk, but not as Starlink. Starlink still a private company, even if it is owned by him, but still a private, and I hope it is listed company. So he is responsible for shareholders also, and business also, and customer also. So that is the difference. But it will not matter. Sometime being close to the government is helpful, actually. It is helpful. It is not always wrong to be close to the government. In India also, some business houses are very close to government, and even government-owned companies are service providers, BSNL. So will we say that you are close to government, so you are not good? So that is a wrong thinking. But as you were mentioning about disruptor thing, according to me, our own operator, our own industry are the more bigger disruptor than the Starlink, according to me. And I'm proud to say that, actually. We have been disrupting the market from 2G time, actually. We straightway went to digital 2G, we skipped 3G, 4G, 5G. Now we are talking of 6G. Lowest mobile tariff, highest data consumption, and tally density, you can see, means what you need in the disruption more than that, actually. So and that is why if they are partnering other disruptors.
I'm left with just about very few minutes, sir. Let me just get in Almas Johari for the last response. Almas Johari, Dr. Satya just said you don't have to always look at it negatively if you are close to the government. In this case, Elon Musk is part of the government. There are people who are talking about challenges vis-a-vis surveillance or data threats or dual use tech. You're also a tech expert. How would you look at this, the possibilities of these challenges? Is it too simplistic to set this aside? Do we have robust mechanisms to be really looking into it all?
Well, TRAI definitely has its own mechanism, and we have one of the strictest bodies especially when it comes to network services. So yes, there are pros and cons. Dr. Satya already mentioned about what could be the possible advantages. There are also concerns with data sharing, especially when it comes to the Starlink, which we have also heard how it has been used in Ukraine by the military in shooting down and also using their drones to attack the Russian army, right? So this is this is a satellite-based internet. So there are definitely pros and cons,
Right.
but the regulators have to understand and see how we can look at these things, and I'm sure the home affairs and the other departments are already looking at these things in a very so unless this is all, unless we get an approval from the TRAI, is when we can see Starlink actually happening in India. So it is all subject to the approvals. So I'm sure the government of India understands
Right,
these things,
which obviously
and
seems
knows what,
imminent,
is
considering
good
that
for the
deals have
country,
already
and,
been
yeah.
struck, not just with one, but with two service providers. So it just seems imminent for that matter. But to our panelists, thank you very much. Dhruv Motwani, Almas Johari, Dr. Satya N Gupta, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure the viewers have had some questions. Much of them have been answered and put in perspective. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's time for a very short break. On the other side, news and updates with my colleague Shreya Upadhyay.